Good morning, class 10. Today we shall revise two things. Firstly, a poem, A Tiger in the Zoo, and then a lesson, two stories about flying, part 1. But before I start, let me remind you that since your exams are coming, so focus only on those questions which can be asked in MCQ, multiple choice questions. Do not waste your time in learning the lengthy answers or short answers or even two-line answers, because in multiple choice questions, as you can understand from the heading itself, that the question will be given, four choices will be given to you, and you will have to mark the correct choice. Just click where the correct choice is. So don't waste your time at all on learning lengthy part, that is the long answers, short answers or very short answers. What you have to focus upon is read the lessons thoroughly, read the poems thoroughly. You should know which poet has written which poem or which poetess has written which poem. Then each and every detail of the lesson, even the minutest detail in the lesson or in the poem, should be known to you. Because in multiple choice questions there is one advantage and there is one disadvantage also. The advantage is that the options are given in front of you. There are 4 options, 1 is correct, 3 are wrong. So if you know the correct answer, then it takes not even a second to click that answer. But if you don't know that answer, then what you will do? You will only keep on doing guesswork. You will keep doing guesswork in every question, and sometimes your guess may be right, but sometimes it may prove wrong. So you will lose marks in that case. That is why, in order to score well in the MCQ type of questions, you must know the details of the chapters, of the poems. We will revise grammar also, and you should brush up the basics of your grammar topics. In MCQ, you can't get lengthy exercises in passage form as you used to get in class 9. That can't be asked. Everything it will be in the form of multiple choice. 4 choices are given. You have to mark 1. 1 is the correct answer. 3 are wrong answers. You will have to find out immediately which is the correct answer. So unless and until you know things properly, you have done detailed study, you can't score well. That is why start preparing well in each subject. Try to score maximum marks so that your result is good, because you are studying these topics since April. So there is nothing which is new to you. There is nothing which you don't know. The only thing is read things properly, read things in detail. Now today we shall start the poem A Tiger in the Zoo, written by Leslie Norris. Now in this poem, the pathetic condition of the tiger is being described. The tiger actually should be living in his natural habitat, that is the forest. But unfortunately, human beings have confined the tigers to zoo. They are kept in zoo, they are confined in a limited area, they have to walk in that small cage. Although it is not very small, but still it is not as big as his natural habitat should be, that is the open air, the jungle, the forest. So when the tiger is kept in this restricted area in the zoo, he feels sad, he is angry, and he is sad. Whereas when he stays in the jungle, he has freedom, he has liberty to move here and there, to go near the pond and drink water, to wait near the pond for its prey to come, etc. So such kind of liberties, such kind of freedom is not given to the tiger, is not available to the tiger when he is kept in a zoo, when he is confined in a cage. And when the tiger is in the forest, in this poem there is a stanza in which the poetess is writing that when the tiger is in the forest and if his natural habitat is destroyed by human beings, that is, if the forests are cut, then what is the tiger going to do? It is going to harm human beings. How? It will try to enter the towns, it will try to enter villages, and it will try to cause destruction. The people living in those surrounding areas will be horrified, will be terrified, and the tiger may cause harm to their lives. So we must protect the natural habitat of the tiger. But in the last stanza again, the poetess is describing that when the tiger is confined in his cage, in the morning and in the afternoon, he is being disturbed by the constant visitors which come to the zoo and visit the zoo. They look at the tiger, they stand there, they admire the beauty of the tiger's body, they look at the grace of the tiger, but in their enjoyment they unknowingly cause a lot of disturbance to this animal, and he is not able to be at peace. Mentally he is disturbed, and at night also he is not at peace. He is not able to sleep in a peaceful atmosphere, because the zookeepers, those who are in charges, they keep on patrolling the area at night. They keep on moving in cars, and they see that all animals are in their cages. There is no harm which is being caused to them. They are safe and sound there. So they keep on patrolling all those areas, and the bright light of the cars and the sound of the car constantly causes harm to the peace of the tiger, and the tiger is not able to sleep or be at rest mode at the night time also, because of the sound of the cars which cause a lot of disturbance and the bright light of the cars. So in the daytime he is being disturbed by the visitors, and at night he is being disturbed by the zookeepers who keep on patrolling. So with this sad note, the poem comes to an end. Now I am reading the poem. It has already been explained to you. So let us quickly revise so that we can do the revision of 2 stories about flying, part 1 chapter also today. I am reading the poem and I will explain simultaneously. This poem contrasts a tiger in the zoo with the tiger in its natural habitat. The poem moves from the zoo to the jungle and back again to the zoo. Read the poem silently once and say which stanzas speak about the tiger in the zoo and which one speaks about the tiger in the jungle. So this we will do when I will come to those stanzas. He stalks in his vivid stripes. He stalks, he moves, he walks. He stands for the tiger. Now I am giving you one example. Like suppose from this poem a question comes in the multiple choice. Now it can be asked like this. He in this poem stands for option A tiger, option B cat, option C dog, option D lion. So if you know, you will click on the first option tiger and the answer is correct. So this is the way you have to prepare things. Don't go into lengthy details. Go into the minutest detail, whether it is a poem or a chapter. You don't waste time at all in learning lengthy answers. MCQ needs detailed study of the lessons. He stalks in his vivid stripes. Vivid stripes. The stripes found on the body of the tiger are varied. There are in multiple numbers. There are so many black stripes on the body of the tiger, and he proudly walks in his cage. His beautiful body is a striped body. There are black stripes on his body. He stalks in his vivid stripes the few steps of his cage. That means when the tiger is in his cage, he moves up and down in his cage. He walks proudly in his cage. The way of walking of the tiger is full of pride. He does not walk in a lethargic or a lazy manner, but the style of walking shows pride. On pads of velvet quiet, in his quiet rage. On pads of velvet quiet, that means the foot of the tiger has pads. It is like a cushion, and that is why when the tiger walks, it does not make any sound. The tiger is capable of walking silently without making any kind of sound, because the cushion which is there in its paws, the pad which is there in its paws, does not make any sound. That's why he can walk silently. In his quiet rage, he is angry within. Why he is angry? Because he has been kept in a cage. He is not allowed to go in the open air or move in his natural habitat. He should be lurking in shadow. Should be lurking in shadow. That means he should be waiting in those places which is actually his home. What is that place? The forest, the woods, the jungle. So the poetess is saying that he should have been in his natural habitat, that is the forest. He should be moving under the shade of the tree. He should be lying under the shade of the tree, but he has been confined in a cage. He should be lurking in shadow. He should be waiting under the shadow of a tree. Sliding through long grass, that means he should also be allowed to go into the forest, and sliding means moving through long grass which is there in the forest. Near the water hole where plump deer pass. Plump means fat. If he is allowed to go to the forest in his natural habitat, then he will be given freedom to rest under the shade of the tree, or he can move through the long grass, or he can go near a water hole, that is he can go near any pond, and he can wait there for the deer to pass by so that he can attack its prey and eat it. He should be snarling around houses. Now this is the stanza where the poetess is saying that if his natural habitat is destroyed, then what is the tiger going to do? He should be snarling around houses. Snarling means he would angrily growl, he would make angry sound, and he would move around houses which are in the nearby areas. At the jungle's edge, if his natural habitat, the jungle, is destroyed, then he is going to go and move around those areas which are near the jungle, and he will start attacking the houses, attacking the people. Baring his white fangs, his claws, terrorizing the village. Bearing means showing. His white fangs are his white teeth. He is going to make the people afraid. He will terrorize the people living there by showing his white teeth to them and his dangerous claws. But he is locked in a concrete cell. But again, now the poetess is coming back to the place where the tiger has been kept in confinement. That is his cage in the zoo. Again, the poetess is talking about the zoo in this stanza, and she is saying, but he is locked in a concrete cell. Concrete cell means cemented cell made of cement. His strength behind bars. Behind bars, that means he is imprisoned. He is not able to show his strength. He is so powerful. He is a dangerous animal, but he is not able to show his power to the world because he has been locked. He has been confined in a wall. Stalking the length of his cage, ignoring visitors. Stalking the length of his cage. Stalking means he is walking in the length of his cage. He is moving to and fro. He is moving up and down only inside his cage. He cannot go anywhere. He is not free to go out, and he is just moving in that length and ignoring visitors. If you have been to the zoo, children, you must have noticed that when you go in front of the cage of a tiger or a lion, what do? Do they come and approach you and they welcome you? No. If they are sitting inside their den, they keep sitting inside. They don't come out. If they are enjoying the sunshine, they are sitting outside and enjoying the sunshine, they keep sitting there. They are not, they don't get up when the visitors come and stand near their cage to appreciate their beauty. So similarly, the poetess is writing that the movement of the tiger is restricted to the cage, and the tiger keeps on ignoring the visitors who come and see him. Last stanza. He hears the last voice at night. Now what last voice he hears? The voice of the zookeeper who has come to patrol the place. That means who has come to see whether everything is intact, all animals are safe and sound, there is no outsider, there is no visitor still there in the zoo, because after a limited time in the evening, the visitors are not allowed. Their entry is banned after a restricted time in the evening. So the zookeeper does patrolling in his cars, and he keeps on seeing. His main aim is to see that all animals are safely there in their cages, in their places where they should be. There should be no visitor left inside the zoo, etc. He hears the last voice at night, the patrolling cars, and stares with his brilliant eyes at the brilliant stars. The last two lines shows grief, and the poetess is saying that in that confined cage, in that area, in that restricted area, the tiger with his bright eyes keeps on looking sometimes at the bright sky, at the bright stars in the sky, because he is questioning God. Why have you put me here? Why have you put me in confinement? Why I am not free? I am a free animal. I should be free in the jungle. I should also lead a free life like others do. So why am I being confined in a cage? With this sad note, the poem comes to an end. As I have been giving earlier, the question answers will be in the PDF, so you will see and complete it. And children, please remember that if you have already done all the questions neatly earlier in your fair copies, you have already maintained a fair copy and everything you have done without missing anything, then please don't do it again and again. You will do it again only if earlier you were doing in rough copy and now you are doing in fair. Then obviously you have to do everything properly because your copies will be marked. But if already you were doing in a neat manner in a fair copy, then don't start doing everything again. It will be a waste of time and your effort. Now let us come to two stories about flying. His first flight. Quickly I will brush up the chapter. I will just revise the chapter fast. Why? Because in detail I have already done with you. All the question answers I have already done with you. That is why let us quickly revise that this chapter is about a seagull. If you remember, in this chapter we have studied that there was a young seagull who was sitting alone on the ledge, on the narrow wall, and he was afraid. Why he is afraid? Because he has never flown independently, and now his mother, father, his brother and sisters all are flying, and he is sitting there alone. He is afraid of falling. He is not able to gather strength. He is not able to gather strength to fly independently. His mother encourages him. His father also tries to encourage him. His brothers and sisters also try to call him, but seeing the depth, when he looks down and sees the height, the depth, then he is even more scared and he is not able to gather strength. But ultimately, in the end of the story, we have read that he finally does fly, all his fear flies away, and he is able to make an independent flight. Now, what I shall do is, I shall quickly read the chapter to you without any explanation just now, because I have explained line by line earlier. I will quickly read the chapter to you so that you brush up the chapter and you know once again what the chapter is about. His first flight. The young seagull was alone on his ledge. His two brothers and his sister had already flown away the day before. Now, suppose in the multiple choice question I ask you, the seagull had two brothers. Option A, two brothers. Option B, three brothers. Option C, three brothers and one sister. Option D, none of these. So what is the correct answer? A. The seagull had two brothers. Okay, so if you know every minutest detail, then surely you will get very good marks. You will never get stuck up in any question. He had been afraid to fly with them. Somehow, when he had taken a little run forward to the brink of the ledge and attempted to flap his wings, he became afraid. The great expanse of the sea stretched down beneath, and it was such a long way down, miles down. He felt certain that his wings would never support him, so he bent his head and ran away back to the little hole under the ledge where he had slept at night. Even when each of his brothers and his little sister, whose wings were far shorter than his own, ran to the brink, flapped their wings and flew away, he failed to muster up courage to take the plunge which appeared to him so desperate. His father and mother had come around, calling to him shrilly, upbraiding him, threatening to let him starve on his ledge unless he flew away. But for the life of him, he could not move. That was 24 hours ago. Since then, nobody had come near him. The day before, all day long, he had watched his parents flying about with his brothers and sister, perfecting them in the art of flight, teaching them how to skim the waves and how to dive for fish. He had in fact seen his older brother catch his first herring and devour it. Herring is a small sea fish. And devour it, standing on a rock, while his parents circled round, raising a proud cackle. And all the morning, the whole family had walked about on the big plateau midway down the opposite cliff, taunting him with his cowardice. The sun was now ascending the sky, blazing on his ledge that faced the south. He felt the heat because he had not eaten since the previous nightfall. He stepped slowly out to the brink of the ledge and, standing on one leg with the other leg hidden under his wing, he closed one eye, then the other, and pretended to be falling asleep. Still, they took no notice of him. He saw his two brothers and his sister lying on the plateau, dozing with their heads sunk into their necks. His father was preening the feathers on his white back. Only his mother was looking at him. She was standing on a little high hump on the plateau, her white breast thrust forward. Now and again, she tore at a piece of fish that lay at her feet and then scraped each side of her beak on the rock. The sight of the food maddened him. How he loved to tear food that way, scraping his beak now and again to wet it. Ga, 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 he cried, begging her to come to him, to bring him some food. Go, Kolha, she screamed back derisively. But he kept calling plaintively, and after a minute or so, he uttered a joyful scream. His mother had picked up a piece of fish and was flying across to him with it. He leaned out eagerly, tapping the rock with his feet, trying to get nearer to her as she flew across. But when she was just opposite to him, she halted, her wings motionless, the piece of fish in her beak almost within reach of his beak. He waited a moment in surprise, wondering why she did not come nearer, and then, maddened by hunger, he dived at the fish. With a loud scream, he fell outwards and downwards into space. Then a monstrous terror seized him, and his heart stood still. He could hear nothing, but it only lasted a minute. The next moment, he felt his wings spread outwards. The wind rushed against his breast feathers, and then under his stomach, and against his wings. He could feel the tips of his wings cutting through the air. He was not falling headlong now. He was soaring gradually downwards and outwards. He was no longer afraid. He just felt a bit dizzy. Then he flapped his wings once and he soared upwards. Ga ga ga, ga ga, go kola. His mother swooped past him, her wings making a loud noise. He answered her with another scream. Then his father flew over him screaming. He saw his two brothers and his sister flying around him, curveting and banking and soaring and diving. Then he completely forgot that he had not always been able to fly, and commended himself to dive and soar and curve, shrieking shrilly. He was near the sea now, flying straight over it, facing straight out over the ocean. He saw a vast green sea beneath him, with little ridges moving over it. And he turned his beak sideways and cawed amusedly. His parents and his brothers and sister had landed on this green flooring ahead of him. They were beckoning to him, calling shrilly. He dropped his legs to stand on the green sea. His legs sank into it. He screamed with fright and attempted to rise again, flapping his wings. But he was tired and weak with hunger and could not rise, exhausted by the strange exercise. His feet sank into the green sea, and then his belly touched it, and he sank no farther. He was floating on it, and around him his family was screaming, praising him, and their beaks were offering him scraps of dogfish. He had made his first flight. So, what lesson did you learn? I had told you last time also that in this lesson, the moral of the lesson is, the writer is saying that if we are determined, if we have courage within, then everything is possible. We have to accept challenges in life, children. Life is not a bed of roses. There are ups and downs, there are challenges in life, but like the seagull could ultimately fly independently, his parents did not help him at all. They kept on calling him, kept on encouraging him, but ultimately it was the seagull himself who had to take the first flight. He had to try that attempt himself. Nobody came to his help. Why? Because in life also you have to face the challenges independently. Your parents can guide you, your teachers can help you, but you yourself will have to do things on your own so that you can achieve your aim. Nobody on your behalf can do it. You will have to face the challenge, and if you are determined, if you have courage, if you have strong willpower, the desire to do things, then every challenge will become a little challenge for you, a small challenge which you can easily overcome. So in the previous class also, when I did this lesson with you children, I remember that I had done all the question answers with you of this particular part. I will check my record. If I have done each and every question answer with you, then I am not going to send the question answer PDF once again. But if I have not done all these, then surely I will send, as I have been doing in my previous lessons. Okay, so keep on revising everything, keep on reading the chapters in detail, mark all detailed things which can be asked in your MCQ type of questions, and I'm very sure you will get success, you will pass with very good marks in all the subjects. So keep on revising, keep preparing. All the very best for your tests. Have a nice day.